I definitely have always relished in vanquishing my enemies. Man, that is a provocative statement, isn't it? That's a direct quote from Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy during a recent NPR interview, and honestly, it perfectly sets the stage for what we're looking at today. We're going to explore exactly how a media empire, one built entirely on controversy, chaos, and totally unfiltered opinions, navigates its enemies, whether those enemies are rival creators, massive corporate sponsors, or investigative journalists.
So welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking the incredibly complex Dave Portnoy phenomenon. To do this, we're synthesizing insights from his highly anticipated new memoir, a really candid recent NPR interview with Steve Inskeep, and, this is the heavy stuff, actual federal court documents from his high-stakes defamation lawsuit. We're going to look right at the intersection of media, law, and modern celebrity to really understand the mechanics of the Barstool blueprint. Let's just dive right into this.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. First, the memoir of controversy. Second, building the Barstool brand. Third, the insider defamation lawsuit. Fourth, the actual malice standard. And finally, number 5, politics and public image.
All right, starting with Section 1, the memoir of controversy, framing the Barstool narrative.
Portnoy's new book is fittingly titled, Cancel Me If You Can. Now, in his interview with NPR, he actually describes looking back on his 24-year journey as a, quote, pinch me fairy tale. But here's the thing, it's a fairy tale written with a very specific purpose. The book is largely utilized as a vehicle to address his adversaries, settle some really long-standing scores, and detail his rise to absolute notoriety. He even joked that at the end of his career, he literally wants to sell out Madison Square Garden for an event just to, let it rip on people he has issues with.
Moving on to Section 2. Building the Barstool brand, or as I like to call it, the business of chaos.
Behind the scenes, the Barstool business lore is just rapid-fire chaos. According to a dedicated Reddit thread that analyzed the book's revelations, Portnoy almost completely blew up their massive acquisition deal with Penn Entertainment. Why? Because he demanded a $7 million payout for one of his key talents, Big Cat, before he would even agree to sell. It shows intense loyalty, sure, but also extreme volatility. We also learn about some pretty intense internal friction. For example, the Chernin Group literally had to orchestrate a mediation trip to Los Angeles just to fix a feud between Portnoy and the Pardon My Take crew, which all stemmed from some ties to rival site Deadspin. It's a business built on and constantly managing internal chaos.
And this perfectly illustrates how Portnoy weaponizes his massive, highly controversial audience to command real market power. Look at the High Noon leverage story. So during a period of intense public backlash against Portnoy, the beverage sponsor High Noon actually dropped him. How did he respond? Well, he quietly began planning a rival beverage brand called Not Water. He then turned around and told High Noon about this competitor, and as a result, High Noon paid a massive sum of money, enough for a new vacation home according to the book, just to return as a sponsor. I mean, it is an absolute masterclass in using audience loyalty as business leverage.
But, that leverage totally goes both ways, as we see in the Call Her Daddy podcast fallout. According to Portnoy, Barstool had an ironclad 3-year contract with the hosts. He claims that when they wanted to renegotiate for more money, their strategy was to publicly accuse Barstool of fostering a toxic workplace and sexual harassment, basically in order to void the deal. Now, Portnoy openly admitted to NPR that because of his controversial brand and the edgy jokes he makes, the public absolutely would have believed those allegations. It highlights a really fascinating vulnerability here. A brand that's built on being uncancelable is actually uniquely susceptible to certain types of public accusations.
Okay, let's get into Section 3, the insider defamation lawsuit, navigating media allegations.
Tracing the legal timeline here reveals a highly contested chronology. In April 2021, insider reporter Julia Black requested a profile interview, which Portnoy declined. Fast forward to November 2021, and Insider publishes its first article. Now, Portnoy's lawsuit explicitly points out a suspicious timing allegation here. He claims this first publication coincided directly with the quarterly earnings announcement of Penn National Gaming, the very company acquiring Barstool. Then, a few months later, in February 2022, a second article was published by reporters Black and Melkar Lisa. And again, Portnoy alleges this was timed right before another Penn earnings call. At the very heart of this lawsuit are two fiercely competing claims. On one side, Insider published explosive reports citing anonymous young women who claimed sexual encounters with Portnoy began consensually but turned violent, frightening, and even included filming without permission. Portnoy vehemently denied these claims. He sued Insider for defamation, stating the articles were completely false and published to intentionally destroy his reputation. On the other side of this, Insider's editor-in-chief, Nicholas Carlson, mounted a strong journalistic defense in an editor's note. He stated that Insider used credible sources to report on a rich, powerful person using their power harmfully, classifying it as a highly newsworthy public interest story.
And the business impact of this clash? Absolutely monumental. According to Portnoy's formal legal complaint, Barstool Sports lost at least $12 million in advertiser revenue in the immediate aftermath of that first article's publication. So to put that in perspective, controversy might be a core business strategy, but it clearly carries incredibly real, quantifiable financial risks.
Which brings us to Section 4, the actual malice standard, the legal shield.
Now, defamation law in the United States treats people differently based on their fame. If you're a private citizen, proving defamation is a lot easier. You generally only need to show the publisher was negligent. However, because Portnoy has voluntarily injected himself into the public eye and achieved massive notoriety, he is, by his own admission, a celebrity entrepreneur. The law strictly categorizes him as a public figure. And for public figures, the First Amendment makes proving defamation exceptionally difficult.
Because he's a public figure, Portnoy had to meet a standard called actual malice. This is a completely crucial Supreme Court standard. It basically means you have to prove the publisher either knew the statements were 100% false before publishing them, or they acted with reckless disregard for the truth. The federal court ultimately ruled that Portnoy's complaint failed because it did not plausibly allege that Insider possessed this highly specific, stringent level of malice. So the legal shield of the First Amendment protected the publication, leading to the lawsuit's total dismissal.
All right, our final section, number 5, politics and public image. Polarization as a platform.
In his NPR interview, Portnoy openly discusses the political calculus of both himself and his audience, and it's really interesting. On one side, he vehemently condemns systemic political corruption. He states clearly that he hates politicians who use their office to trade stocks or crypto to enrich themselves, and he actually acknowledges that Donald Trump takes advantage of this. However, he balances that against an intense fear of left-wing policies. He states that he votes for Trump because he views the prospect of, quote, democratic socialists altering Western society as a far greater threat than financial corruption. It's just a fascinating look at how he balances these contradictions to maintain his cultural foothold with a massive audience.
So we've traversed the chaotic internal business of Barstool, the heavy legal realities of federal defamation law, and the polarized political balancing act Portnoy walks every single day. Which leaves us with this lingering, provocative thought regarding how Barstool Sports continues to thrive despite constant massive battles. In the modern media landscape, when you wield an audience this dedicated, is controversy actually a liability? Or is it, in fact, the ultimate business strategy? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.